What if the final rehearsal of your life whispered back, "Step into the voice behind the curtain and follow Evelyn Harrow as a mysterious presence guides her through a blood-stained graduation play where no one is truly alone. Shadows breathe, props bleed, and every line may be her last. Will she escape the script written in red or become its next page? If chilling stories and haunting soundscapes keep you wide-eyed at night, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another tale from the Dark Whispers channel. Your support helps us bring more spine-tingling narratives to life. Thank you for watching. The old theater creaked like an aging beast in its sleep, its bones groaning with the weight of years and secrets. Dust swirled in the shafts of light, slicing through the high windows, catching on every velvet fold of curtain, every warped floorboard, every faded seat cushion. Rehearsals had gone long today, and the sun was beginning to bleed out behind the trees that loomed beyond the stained glass windows of the back wall. Inside, only a few remained, and Evelyn Harrow was one of them. She stood center stage, shoulders square, voice steady, but her eyes kept flicking toward the wings. The auditorium was empty, save for a distant clatter from backstage and the soft click of the director's pen as he scribbled notes from the front row. The rest of the cast had left hours ago, their laughter still faintly echoing through the halls as they went out for drinks or disappeared into the cooling dusk. But Evelyn had stayed behind. She always did. Something about this place made her feel watched, and it wasn't the kind of watching that made you feel safe. It started last week. At first, just a flicker, a breath at her neck that shouldn't have been there, a creak behind her when the air was still. Then, on the third night, a voice. "You're turning the wrong way, Evelyn." The whisper had curled into her ear like a tendril of smoke, so close she felt the vibration in her skull. She had whipped around. No one was there, just empty black curtains, unmoving. The light technician had sworn the mic was off. The sound booth had been locked. And yet, the voice had known her name. Tonight, it returned. As she rehearsed her final monologue, her bare feet scraping across the cool stage wood, she heard it again. Slower. Feel it. The pain. It's real, isn't it? Her lips stopped mid-line. Cold bloomed across her back. She waited, breath held, eyes scanning the wings. The director didn't look up. He hadn't heard it. Just like before. "Mr. Garrison?" Her voice trembled slightly. "Do you say something?" He looked up from his notebook with the slow blink of someone dragged out of deep concentration. No. Keep going. You're almost there." She swallowed hard. "I thought I heard—" "There's no one back there, Evelyn." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just us." The lights above her buzzed faintly. A high-pitched whine buried beneath their glow. She took a breath, turned back toward the wings, and stepped into her next line. Her voice echoed, just slightly too loud for the empty theater. It bounced off the rafters and slid into the shadows. Then, beneath her words, came another voice, faint, raspy, mimicking, repeating. She faltered. Her lips moved, but it was no longer her alone. The second voice was softer than her own, but it matched her inflection, her rhythm, her pauses. It came from the left wing, from the dark. She spun again, nearly tripping over the hem of her rehearsal skirt. "Is someone there?" She snapped, her voice sharp with panic. The curtains rustled. Garrison sighed. Evelyn, it's an empty theater. You know how these old places sound. She didn't respond. Her heart thudded too loud in her ears. Slowly, carefully, she approached the side of the stage. The curtain swayed gently, not from the breeze. There were no windows open, but from movement. She reached for the fabric, her fingers trembling. Behind the curtain, nothing. Just ropes, old props, coiled wires. And yet, there it was again. Don't trust the director. She stumbled back, heart hammering. A scream rising in her throat, but catching in her chest like a fishhook. She looked at Garrison. He was still scribbling, unfazed. Hadn't heard a thing. She left the stage without a word, shoes in hand, and fled into the corridor. The dressing rooms were no comfort. The long mirrors, once bright with bulbs, now flickered weakly, leaving pockets of shadow where her reflection warped. Her breath came fast, sharp. The voice had changed this time. It had said something new. Why now? She splashed water on her face from the sink, stared at her dripping reflection, and tried to steady her thoughts. Maybe it was stress. Maybe she was just tired. The role had demanded more from her than she'd expected. This wasn't just a performance. This was the final act of 4 years. Her last chance to prove herself. Still, the voice haunted her. Not just the words, but the tone. There was something familiar in it. Something that curled around a memory just out of reach. The bulb above her flickered again. A short buzz, then a pop. Darkness swallowed the room. She froze. In the mirror, her reflection lingered a second longer than it should have. She didn't breathe. Somewhere behind her, the faintest scrape, like fingers on the dressing room wall. She turned. Slowly. Nothing. But then it spoke again. Not from behind the curtain this time, but from within the very walls. You were chosen, Evelyn. You just don't remember. She bolted. The hallway was a tunnel of muffled sound. The hum of distant spotlights, the creak of old beams settling, the soft drip of something in the far corner. Her footsteps slapped against the tiles, echoing louder than they should. She passed the old storage room, walked, always locked, but tonight the door was ajar. A pale sliver of light leaked out. She didn't want to look. She looked. Inside, beneath the rows of dusty costumes and forgotten props, stood a tall mirror. One she had never seen before, ornate, cracked along one edge, covered in faint smears like dried handprints. As she stared, the light behind her flickered. Then died. The mirror brightened, not with light, with motion. Her reflection stepped forward. She didn't. It smiled. She didn't. And then it raised a hand and pressed it flat against the glass. From the other side, Evelyn screamed, and the mirror shattered. All the lights in the theater burst at once, a cascade of popping bulbs and snapping wires. Garrison's shout echoed through the building, followed by the slam of a door and hurried footsteps. But Evelyn didn't hear him. She was standing barefoot in the middle of the storage room, shards of glass at her feet, breath ragged, skin cold. The whisper came again. It's begun. And then silence. Complete, suffocating silence, except for the sound of someone breathing right behind her. The next morning, Evelyn woke in a cold sweat, the echo of glass breaking still alive in her mind. Her blanket clung to her skin like wet gauze. The silence in her dorm room was heavy, almost unnatural, as if the world outside had paused to listen. She sat up slowly, scanning the room for shadows that didn't belong. Her mirror, propped on the closet door, stared back at her, uncracked, unmarked, showing only her pale, wide-eyed, tangled and rumpled sheets. But something still felt wrong. She checked her phone. No missed calls, no messages. No indication that anyone had noticed her abrupt disappearance from rehearsal, or that she'd screamed so loud her throat still ached. Maybe they hadn't heard it. Maybe they hadn't wanted to. When she arrived at the theater that afternoon, it looked as if nothing had happened. The hallway lights flickered with their usual tired rhythm. The storage room door was closed, locked again, the same dusty no-entry sign dangling from the handle by a rusted wire. "Hey," called a voice. She turned sharply. It was Marcus, the lighting assistant. Hands shoved in his pockets, slouched as always, but his brow furrowed when he saw her expression. "You okay? You weren't in the group chat last night." "I left early," she said, forcing her voice not to shake. "Did something happen with the lights?" He shrugged. "Nah, all seemed fine. Garrison's been muttering to himself about rewrites, but he does that every tech week. Why?" She stared past him at the black curtain still drawn across the stage. "Just wondering." They began rehearsal like any other day. Garrison sat in the same front row seat, jotting endless notes. The other actors milled around, warming up their voices, running lines, complaining about the coffee. Evelyn tried to mimic their ease, but her eyes kept darting to the wings, waiting for that whisper to return. It didn't. Not at first. Her cue came. She stepped into the center of the stage. Light pooled around her feet, and the hush of attention fell over the room. She took a breath, reached for the first line, and froze. The voice. It didn't come from the wings this time. It came from above, high in the catwalks, nestled in shadows where only the lighting techs dared go. Something whispered, "Don't look up." Her head jerked upward on instinct. There was nothing. Just scaffolding, thick cables, and a few dusty spotlights casting long beams across the rafters. No movement. No one there. But the sound of breathing lingered. Heavy, uneven, as if someone were crouched between the steel bars, watching. "Evelyn?" Garrison's voice cut through the quiet. "Your line?" She forced herself to focus, to return to the moment. But the words came out dry, mechanical, a pale echo of yesterday's fire. Later, in the green room, the cast chattered and laughed around her. No one noticed she was trembling. No one noticed the bruise forming at the edge of her palm where she had clenched her hand so tightly her nails had broken skin. She sat alone in front of the makeup mirror, the fluorescent lights overhead flickering in and out. The glass surface rippled with reflections. Hers and another? For the briefest second, someone stood behind her in the mirror. Not a castmate, not a tech. A tall figure with a blank face and hands like charcoal smears. Then, gone. She didn't turn around. Instead, she whispered, "What do you want?" The answer came, low and wet, as though spoken through water. "To help." Help. She stared at her own reflection, lips trembling. I don't need help. You already asked for it. A sudden knock startled her. Evelyn? It was Sophia, her understudy, her voice bright and oblivious. Garrison's looking for you, says we're doing the final scene again. Be right there, Evelyn replied, already wiping the sweat from her forehead, hiding the tremor in her voice. Back on stage, the light seemed too bright, as if exposing things not meant to be seen. Her scene partner, Nathan, delivered his lines with wide gestures, his voice echoing off the walls. Evelyn stood opposite him, playing her part, but her mind remained elsewhere. Halfway through the scene, the sound changed. The ambient silence that usually cradled the actors' voices shifted, as though the walls had closed in. The reverb grew sharper, unnatural. The stage creaked beneath her feet, but not from her movement. A slow, deliberate creak, like someone else was walking just behind her. She turned mid-line. No one. The audience seats were still empty. The wings were dark. But the air, it moved. And then everyone froze. The sound system let out a high-pitched whine, a feedback loop that stabbed into the skull. The lights above blinked once, twice, then burst with a sharp snap. Screams rang out. The stage fell into chaos. When the emergency lights flickered on, Evelyn stood in the middle of the stage, alone. Nathan was gone. So was the rest of the cast. Garrison stood motionless, staring at her from the shadows, his notepad crumpled in his hand. "What happened?" she whispered. No answer. She stepped down from the stage, heart hammering. The sound of her footsteps was too loud. Until it wasn't hers anymore. A second set followed. She turned fast. Still no one. "Garrison?" she called. He stared at her, eyes wide. "There's no one there, Evelyn," he said almost too calmly. She wanted to scream, wanted to shake him. "Didn't you hear that? See the lights? Where did everyone go?" His lips parted, as if to answer. But then something shifted in his gaze, like a fog creeping behind his eyes. He turned away, walked up the aisle, didn't look back. She stood in the silence, stage dust curling at her feet. Somewhere deep in the theater, a door creaked open slowly, painfully, like a scream trapped in wood. Then laughter, childlike, hollow, and finally the voice. "They won't believe you, Evelyn, but I do. ... This sound of something dragging across the floor filled the empty space behind her. A slow, scraping rhythm moving closer. She didn't run, not yet. She turned around. No one was there. The script was no longer the same. Evelyn sat cross-legged on her dorm floor, pages fanned out before her like the shattered pieces of a mirror. She had read these lines 100 times, memorized them, performed them. But now, some were different, slightly off. One line replaced by another, a new stage direction she swore hadn't been there the day before. A character who said something with a tone that shifted the entire meaning of the scene. She picked up a page and ran her fingers along the crease where it had been folded, trembling as she read the new line aloud. "Let the curtain fall, even if no one claps." That hadn't been in the script. And yet it was written in the same typeface, same ink, same formatting. Seamless, like it had always been there. A whisper brushed her ear. "You read it well." She jerked around. Her dorm room was still, the faint hum of the mini-fridge the only sound. Her roommate hadn't come back from the weekend trip. The bed across from hers sat empty, untouched. She clutched the page to her chest. "I didn't write this," she whispered to no one. "I didn't learn this." But the voice had no face. It didn't need one. Some lines are rhythm in places you can't see. Her phone buzzed suddenly, shattering the quiet. "A message from Sophia. Garrison canceled rehearsal. Electrical issues." Another buzz. "Nathan's gone home sick. No one's picking up." What the heck is going on? Evelyn didn't answer. She simply stared at her mirror again, half expecting something, someone, to look back. When she returned to the theater that night, she did so alone. The doors weren't locked. They never were. The administration building was nearby, but it might as well have been in another world. The theater stood apart. A relic of another time. Tall windows like stained eyes, old wood whispering beneath each footstep. Inside, the silence greeted her like an old friend. She moved slowly down the main aisle, her footsteps muffled by the worn carpet. The air smelled of dust and dried paint. Somewhere, high above in the rafters, something creaked, but not in response to her. The stage was dark, except for one solitary light hanging from the grid, casting a single white circle onto the boards. The ghost light. It was never supposed to be on during the day, or left alone. She stepped onto the stage. A cold wave passed through her, not from the air, but from the wood itself, like standing on a grave. The whisper came again. "Say it." Her mouth opened against her will. ... Words spilled out. Words not hers, not from memory, not from any page she'd rehearsed. "Forgive me. I didn't know the part was real." She clapped her hands over her mouth, horrified. The light above her flickered. She heard it again. The dragging sound. Slow, heavy, like something being pulled across the wooden boards backstage. She turned toward the curtain. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice dry. Silence. Then, like a ripple across fabric, a reply. "I am the echo of roles never played." The curtains quivered. A sudden gust of cold air brushed her legs, though the building had no draft. Evelyn stepped back, trembling. Something moved behind the curtain. She could see the shape of it, tall, wrong, shifting like smoke, trapped in a body. It didn't speak again, but she heard something else. The faint scratching of a pencil, furious and rhythmic, like someone writing very fast. She backed away, but the whisper returned. "The script has changed because you have changed." A loud bang echoed through the space. She jumped, eyes darting to the side stage door. It hung open slightly, the kind of open that felt intentional. Her feet moved before she could think. She stepped through into the wings, then down the backstage hallway. The walls were covered in old posters from past productions. Some she recognized, some she didn't. But there was something wrong with one of them. She stopped. A poster for The Red Dream, dated 2 decades ago. Cast photo beneath the title. There she was, or someone who looked just like her. Same eyes, same face, same wide, haunted expression. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. The names were all listed below. The girl's name read Evelyn Hart, not Harrow, Hart. She touched the photo. The surface was warm. And then sound. A scream. Not hers. Not now. A girl's scream echoed through the hallway, sharp and real. Not memory, not imagination. Then came the pounding. Footsteps running above. Not on the catwalks. Not even from the rafters, but higher. As if someone was running on the roof, dragging something behind them. She bolted back toward the stage, but the moment she emerged, she knew something had shifted. The ghost light was gone. The entire theater was pitch black. Then, from above her, a soft voice, a girl's voice. "You're in my role." A soft thud hit the ground behind her. She didn't turn. "You said you'd remember me." Another thud, closer. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She spun at last. There was no one. Just a single sheet of paper lying at her feet. She knelt slowly and picked it up. One line, written in red. "The final act belongs to the forgotten." A whisper brushed her ear. "You haven't learned your last line yet." And somewhere in the darkness, someone began to laugh. The next time Evelyn entered the theater, it was not as an actor. It was as something else. A witness. A participant in a play she didn't remember auditioning for. The hallways no longer felt like mere corridors between dressing rooms and a stage. They stretched oddly, elongated by shadow and silence, the lights above humming as if under strain. The walls seemed closer than before. Breathing, maybe. She didn't bother calling out to anyone. Not Marcus, not Sophia, not even Garrison. They wouldn't hear her. Or worse, they would, and pretend they didn't. She crossed the threshold into the stage wings. The air turned still. Velvet curtains towered above, unmoving, yet Evelyn could feel something behind them, watching, waiting. The same way a stage crew waits for a cue, except no one had called one. The props table was still cluttered with familiar objects. A cracked teacup, a fake dagger, a dusty bouquet wrapped in plastic. She picked up the dagger. The edge was supposed to be rubber. It wasn't. A thin red line welled up across her palm. She dropped it with a gasp. The clatter echoed too long. As if the theater had swallowed it and was rolling the sound around in its gut. "You broke the illusion," the whisper said. "Now it sees you." She spun around. Nothing, only the curtain, heavy, unmoving. Then movement, a ripple through the velvet, subtle as breath. She stepped forward and parted the curtain slightly, peeking into the darkness of the stage. A figure stood center stage under the dim glow of the ghost light. It was her. She didn't move. Neither did the figure. She blinked. It blinked back. And then it smiled. The slow, unnatural smile of someone mimicking something they'd seen but never understood. Evelyn stumbled back. The curtain sliding shut with a hiss. The theater groaned. From high above, something stirred. A weight shifting along the grid of catwalks. Chains clinked. Metal creaked. A slow, dragging sound circled the rigging. She pressed herself against the wall, listening. The whisper came again. Not from the wings, not from the stage. This time, it came from the velvet itself. Don't look at it too long. It forgets how to be you. Footsteps now, from behind the curtain. Soft at first, then heavier, coming closer. Someone walking her exact rhythm. She turned and fled, rushing down the narrow passage between curtain and wall, past coils of wire and stacked flats. Her breath came in quick bursts. Each corner turn felt wrong, the architecture unfamiliar, looping, endless, until suddenly, silence. She had entered the costume room. Dozens of mannequins stood in the low amber light, clothed in tattered period garments. Faces featureless, arms crooked in frozen motion. A hush blanketed the space. But one of the mannequins moved. Only slightly. A head tilt, subtle, almost unnoticeable. Evelyn backed away, eyes scanning every inch of the room. They had all changed positions. No footsteps, no sound. Just different now, closer, angled toward her. They remember, the whisper said. The ones who never took their final bow. She turned to run. The door had vanished. No knob, no seam, just red wallpaper where the exit had been. Her voice cracked. "Why are you doing this?" Silence. Then the unmistakable sound of something sharp being dragged across the floor. She turned. A mannequin had fallen, but it was bleeding. A single drop of crimson rolled from its eye socket, trailing down its cheek like a tear. She screamed. The sound bounced back at her, distorted, like laughter underwater. In the corner of the room, a dress form began twitching, then speaking. In her voice, word for word, it recited lines from the play, lines she had never learned, lines never written. "And if I die upon this stage, let no one close the curtain." Evelyn fell to her knees. It was too much, the noise, the wrongness, the fact that every sound, every whisper, came from inside the very things meant to be lifeless. Then, a gentle hand on her shoulder, cold, fragile, real. She looked up, tears blurring her vision. A girl stood there, young, pale, dressed in the faded costume of a role long buried. Evelyn's breath hitched. It was her again, the girl from the poster, the girl with her face, but her eyes were gone. Two dark hollows stared back at Evelyn, endless and hungry. "Do you remember now?" the girl asked. "No," Evelyn whispered. I don't understand." "You never came." Behind her, the mannequins began to turn, one by one. I waited. The girl placed something in Evelyn's hand. A mask, smooth, blank, crimson-streaked. "You still have time," she said, "but not much." And then she vanished. The door reappeared. Evelyn stumbled out into the hallway, gasping for air like someone who had nearly drowned. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Garrison. Rehearsal resumed. Final dress tomorrow. Be on time. Beneath it, a new message. No contact name, no number, just one sentence. Wear the mask, or she'll wear your skin. The theater lights above her blinked twice, then stayed on, too bright. "Watching," The mask sat on Evelyn's nightstand, untouched, yet somehow alive. It watched her. She didn't sleep that night, not even for a moment. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the girl with hollow sockets and a voice that sounded like her own if it had drowned. Every corner of the dorm whispered now, even the walls. Soft, thin threads of sound, just out of clarity, like murmurs traveling through skin and brick. The message still glared from her phone screen. Wear the mask. Or she'll wear your skin. She had tried to delete it. The screen went black when she tapped it, and when it lit up again, the message had returned. Bold, red, no sender. By morning, the air felt heavier, like something pressing down on her chest. She left her room with the mask in her bag, wrapped in an old hoodie. She couldn't leave it behind. She had tried. 3 times. Each time it had returned to her nightstand. The walk to the theater was silent, the usual campus hum oddly absent. The world seemed paused, the breeze hollow. No one greeted her. No one even looked at her. She passed Sophia near the admin hall. The girl stared straight ahead. Eyes glazed, lips slightly parted, like someone mid-line who had forgotten the next words. At the theater door, her fingers trembled as they pushed it open. Inside, warmth, not comfort, oppression. The air hung still, dense with the smell of grease paint, old wood, and something metallic. Distant sounds drifted from the stage, the muttering of the cast, the scuffle of feet, the crackle of static from the speaker system. But beneath it all, Evelyn heard something else, a heartbeat, low, deep, pounding, like it belonged to the theater itself. She reached backstage. Props were laid out as usual, but the fake dagger from earlier was gone. In its place was a wooden cane, too polished, too pristine. The bouquet had withered overnight. The petals were black. When she touched one, it crumbled into ash. "Evelyn," Garrison called from beyond the curtain. "You're late." She stepped onto the stage. Every spotlight turned to her in unison. She blinked in the harsh white glow. Her castmates stood scattered, each staring at her like she was something foreign. Marcus, in the tech booth, leaned forward slightly, a shadow cast over his eyes. No one said a word. The director's voice broke the silence. "We're running scene 14. Final act. Use the real prop this time." Evelyn's gaze fell to the chair at center stage. On it sat a box, small, plain, open. Inside, the dagger. Its blade gleamed wetly. She took a step forward, mouth dry. "Is this a new version of the scene?" Garrison looked at her without blinking. "It's always been this way." She felt the mask shift slightly in her bag. She approached the chair. Her footsteps echoed too loudly across the wooden floor. With a shaking hand, she picked up the dagger. The weight of it was wrong. Too heavy, too warm, like holding the hand of something dead too long. The stage lights dimmed to a single beam above her. "Begin," said Garrison. She raised the dagger, her line already forming on her lips. And then it happened. A drop, scarlet, from the tip of the blade. It hit the stage with a sound louder than it should have made. A sharp, wet splatter. She dropped the dagger and staggered back. "That's real," she gasped. "That's real blood." The cast didn't move. The crew didn't react. Only Garrison stepped forward. "Your role is not to question," he said, voice flat. "Your role is to bleed." She looked around, desperate. But the cast was frozen, like mannequins. Their eyes fixed but lifeless. Their chests didn't rise. Their fingers didn't twitch. "They're not breathing," Evelyn whispered. Garrison smiled. "They're not alive." Her knees buckled. Somewhere behind her, the curtain rustled. She turned. The girl from the poster stepped out onto the stage. Not translucent, not a ghost, real, as real as the blood still dripping from the dagger. She was wearing the mask now. Evelyn's face, identical, except for the eyes. Black pits, endless. The girl walked toward her with slow, deliberate steps. Garrison backed into the shadows. The lights dimmed further. The heartbeat grew louder. "You were supposed to be me," the girl said. Her voice echoed unnaturally, bouncing from floor to ceiling. "You took my place, but you never finished the role." "I don't know who you are," Evelyn said, voice cracking. The girl tilted her head. "You knew me once." She raised her hand. The dagger lifted from the floor by itself, trembling in the air, then turned point first toward Evelyn. "Finish the scene," the girl said. Evelyn ran, off the stage, through the wings, down the corridor. The lights flickered as she passed. The walls pulsed like they were alive. Behind her, the sound of footsteps. Not running, not chasing, just following, constant, inevitable. She threw open the backstage door. It led not to the exit, but to the costume room. The mannequins had changed again. Now they wore the cast's clothing, each with a name tag. Sophia, Marcus, Nathan. All of them with blank faces. And one mannequin at the back wore a black rehearsal outfit, just like Evelyn's. Its head was missing. And in its hand, the mask. She stepped back, heart racing. The mannequins' heads turned toward her one by one. She slammed the door shut, and the lights went out. Total darkness, until a single spotlight turned on behind her. She turned slowly. The girl stood in its center, mask in hand, dagger in the other. She raised the mask. Evelyn screamed, but the curtain fell, and no one clapped. Evelyn woke up on the stage floor, not in her bed, not in her dorm. She was lying beneath the spotlight, its pale circle casting everything else into darkness. The boards beneath her were cold, damp, and smelled faintly of iron. She didn't remember falling asleep. She didn't even remember getting here. But she remembered the mask. She sat up slowly, limbs aching, as if she had performed 100 scenes back to back. Her breath clouded faintly in the air. The theater was too cold for early spring, too still. Her phone was gone. Her bag was gone. The mask, though. It was resting on the center chair of the stage, as if it had been carefully placed for her. A gift, or a trap. She stood, shaky, and looked into the seats beyond the stage. Empty. But the longer she stared, the more uncertain she became. Shadows sat too still, shapes too sharp. It felt like the house was full, packed with an audience that didn't blink, didn't breathe. She stepped forward, voice dry. "Hello?" No echo, only the soft groan of the rigging above. Like someone shifting in their sleep, she turned toward the wings. "Garrison?" she called. No answer. She moved toward the prop table, hoping for a phone, a note, anything. But the table had changed. The objects were wrong. Not stage props now, but things worn and real. A locket snapped open. A child's shoe, frayed and water-stained. A single glove soaked red. Each item hummed with something. Present. Then a sound. A slow clap. Deliberate. Unseen. It echoed from the rafters, circling. Then a voice followed. "You've stayed longer than most." She spun. Nothing there. "You were always the lead, Evelyn." Her pulse hammered in her throat. She backed away, feet stumbling against the uneven boards. The curtain behind her rippled. Without thinking, she ran into the wings, only to find herself face to face with a mirror, full length, ornate, covered in dust. But her reflection was crystal clear. And wrong. It smiled before she did. Then it moved its hand before she did. It tilted its head the opposite way. And then it mouthed something she didn't say. "Time for your final entrance." She turned and fled down the backstage hall. Doors slamming shut behind her, one by one. Lights flickered overhead. Her reflection followed her in every polished surface. Windows, metal, glass. Always just a breath faster, always smiling. She rounded the corner and found herself in the green room. It was filled with people, castmates, crew, all sitting in silence, staring at her. Their eyes were glassy, unfocused. Their mouths were stitched shut. Thick black thread pulled across their lips, tied tight in the center. They didn't move, didn't even twitch, until she stepped closer. Then they all turned their heads in unison. A low sound began to rise, not from mouths, but from somewhere deeper. A humming, a low, terrible melody, off-key, ancient, and one by one they began to open their mouths, thread snapping, skin tearing, and they screamed. Evelyn ran. Back through the hallway, her ears filled with that chorus of agony. She pushed through the stage door, desperate for air, for light, for escape. But the set had changed. The stage now resembled a hospital room. Gurneys lined the stage, blood-soaked sheets. Medical instruments hung from hooks, swaying as though someone had just passed. And there, in the center, stood the girl, wearing Evelyn's face again, wearing the mask. She held the dagger in one hand, and in the other, a script, pages curled and yellowed. Her name printed across the top in bold red ink. "You never finished your lines," the girl said. Evelyn shook her head. "This isn't real. This is just the role getting to me. I'm not part of this." "You were the role you forgot." The girl took a step forward. "I've waited since the lights went out, since they pulled me away, since no one clapped." Evelyn took a step back, but the stage grew smaller. Every retreat was answered by a forward press of the shadows, pushing her toward center. "You left me behind, Evelyn. But we remember. This place remembers." The dagger gleamed. Evelyn's voice cracked. "I don't know how to end this." The girl raised the script. Say the last line. The pages fluttered. Wind swirled through the theater. The audience, real or not, breathed as one. Evelyn stared down at the script in the girl's hand. There it was, final line, written in blood. She took a breath and whispered it. Let the stage fall quiet and never rise again. The girl smiled and vanished. The set collapsed around her. The audience evaporated into dust. The lights blew out, and Evelyn stood alone in darkness, script clutched in her hand, the silence pressing in from all sides. Then, one final sound, applause, slow, mocking, from behind the curtain. She turned, but no one was there. The applause faded slowly, each clap lingering longer than it should have. Too slow, too deliberate. Like hands that hadn't moved in years suddenly remembered how. Evelyn stood frozen in the center of the ruined stage, her breath a soft mist in the cold. Around her, pieces of the collapsed set lay scattered like broken bones. The script she had read from, the one written in blood, had turned to ash in her hands. She looked toward the curtain. No movement, no whisper, but the silence was deceptive. Beneath it, something shifted. It began with a creak, a long, low groan from beneath the boards, like the theater was exhaling for the first time in years. Evelyn dropped to one knee and pressed her ear against the stage. She heard voices, dozens of them. Some whispered, some sobbed, some screamed. All of them said the same thing. Let us out. She recoiled, stumbling backward until she hit the edge of the spotlight circle. The shadows seemed to flinch at the contact. The air thinned. Her skin prickled. Then the trapdoor opened. It hadn't been there a moment ago. A square section of the stage floor slowly slid aside, revealing a yawning black hole beneath. No ladder, no stairs. Just darkness and a single rope, frayed and swaying gently. Something below sighed. They said I had a new scene, she whispered. A special part just for me. Evelyn froze. Who said that? Sophia's lips curled into a slow smile. They live under the stage. Then her head snapped back violently. Her body yanked into the shadows as if by invisible hands. She vanished without a sound. No scream, no struggle, only the faint echo of her name, repeating from the dark. Evelyn, Evelyn, Evelyn. The trapdoor pulsed, and something climbed out. It wasn't human. It wore a costume, yes, a tattered ensemble from a play no one had ever written. Its face was blank porcelain, cracked down the middle, revealing darkness beneath. Its fingers were far too long. Its joints bent backward. As it rose fully into view, it brought the smell of damp wood and grave dust with it. It turned its head slowly toward Evelyn. Then it spoke with her voice. This is your role now. The stage lights flared, and dozens of ropes dropped from the ceiling like nooses. The rigging above groaned as pulleys spun on their own, curtains sliding open and shut in a rhythm like breathing. Evelyn ran. She dove from the stage and hit the ground hard, scrambling toward the back exit. But the hallway twisted, turned, changed. Doors led to nowhere. Mirrors lined the walls, each reflecting not herself, but versions, twisted, bloodied, screaming. In one, she saw herself hanged from the rafters. In another, she held the dagger, smiling as she carved something into the stage floor. She didn't stop running until she reached the basement stairwell. The door was open. Light flickered below. A voice called her name. It was Marcus. She hesitated at the top step. "Marcus?" she called out. No answer. Just the sound of something dragging. Heavy and wet. Across the cement, she descended slowly. The walls were concrete, the air humid and thick. Old pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping something that wasn't water. With each step, the voices grew louder, overlapping, speaking lines from different plays, different eras, different languages. But they all ended the same way. The curtain falls, the actor stays. At the bottom, she found a room, a circle of chairs. Each seat held a mask, each mask a face she knew. Sophia, Marcus, Nathan, others from previous years, students who had transferred or dropped out. Each mask wept blood. Evelyn turned to leave, but the door was gone. Behind her, the thing in the costume stepped into the room. It didn't speak this time. It simply raised its hand, and the masks all turned toward her. From beneath them, voices rose. Her voice, again and again, repeating one final line. Let the curtain fall and bury the truth. Evelyn screamed, and somewhere, far above, in the empty audience seats, someone began to clap. The applause faded, but the sound remained. It echoed in Evelyn's skull, not as clapping anymore, but as the soft click of teeth, over and over. She stood in the middle of the basement, surrounded by masks that had once been faces, voices that had once belonged to friends. Her heart raced, her fingers trembling as she backed away from the circle of chairs. The masks did not move, but she could feel their eyes. Not the painted ones, but the eyes beneath, watching, measuring. The creature in the costume took one step forward. Evelyn turned and ran. The halls of the basement twisted, warped with each corner she took. The further she ran, the older the walls became. Wood gave way to stone, paint to mold. She passed locked doors with numbers scrawled across them. Some were room numbers. Some were dates. One was simply her own name. She didn't stop to look inside. The only light came from the flickering bulbs overhead, and even those began to die one by one, buzzing out with sharp electric whines. Her breath was loud in the silence, her footsteps louder still, and then a door. At the end of the corridor, heavy, wooden, different from the others. She reached for the handle. It opened before she touched it. On the other side stood Garrison, calm, still, smiling. He was dressed not in his usual corduroy jacket and scarf, but in an immaculate black suit. His hands were clasped behind his back. His eyes glimmered like the stage lights just before they burst. Evelyn, he said smoothly. Right on cue. She stared at him, chest heaving. What is this? What's happening to me? He stepped aside, gesturing to the room behind him. A theater. Not the one above. Older, deeper. It looked carved into the very foundation. The seats were velvet. What moldy. The walls were draped in decaying curtains. And on the stage, a single chair, lit by a spotlight. Garrison walked ahead of her, hands still behind his back, like he was giving a tour. Every stage needs a star, he said. And every story needs an ending. She didn't follow him. You knew, she said. You knew this was happening. His smile widened. I wrote it. She took a step back. He snapped his fingers. The door behind her vanished. Only the theater remained. He walked to the stage, turned to face her, and gestured to the chair. It's yours now. All of it. Evelyn shook her head. Why me? Because you said yes. He held up a paper. The original script. She remembered it now. The audition packet. The form she signed. The line at the bottom, too faint to see at the time. I give myself to the role, fully, forever. You've always been hers, Garrison said. Whose? She asked, her voice cracking. The first one, he said softly. The girl before you. The one whose voice you heard behind the curtain. The one whose reflection smiled first. She never left. She just became the part. Evelyn backed away toward the aisle. Garrison raised his voice. Where do you think you're going? You're already written into the third act. From behind the curtain, something moved. The girl stepped out again, the mask gone now. She wore Evelyn's face. No, not just her face. Her body, perfectly copied, every freckle, every scar, and the real Evelyn felt herself dimming. She looked down at her hands, fading, becoming see-through. Her voice caught in her throat. You can't take this from me, she whispered. The girl smiled. I didn't. You gave it away. She reached out and touched Evelyn's arm. And Evelyn screamed. She fell backward into the empty seats. The room spun. The lights pulsed. Sound distorted. Garrison stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, addressing an audience Evelyn couldn't see, thank you for attending tonight's performance. The room erupted in applause. But it wasn't clapping. It was the sound of hands slapping flesh. Wet, rotten, endless. And then the lights went out. When Evelyn woke again, she was in the makeup chair, backstage, alone. But something was wrong. Her reflection in the mirror smiled before she did. She touched her face, cold. And from somewhere behind the glass, her own voice whispered, Places, please. The mirror cracked, and the curtain rose. The makeup mirror stared back at Evelyn, cracked down the center like a wound. The chair beneath her creaked with the weight of something more than her body. The weight of memory, of replacement, of performance gone too deep. She blinked. Slowly. Her reflection blinked a second too late. She wasn't sure if she was still Evelyn. Not entirely. The air in the dressing room had thickened. It buzzed faintly, like a low hum of stage lights that never fully turned off. Around her, the bulbs flickered erratically. One burst with a soft pop, the glass curling in like a dying flower. She didn't flinch. Something had shifted inside her. She touched her cheek, then her lips. Cold. Beneath the table was the script, the real one. The one they didn't give to anyone else. The one with no cover, no title, only page after page written in deep red ink. It was bound with twine, fragile and stained. She opened it slowly. There were no character names, only lines. Lines that spoke directly to her. Scene 1. She doesn't remember agreeing, but she did. Her signature is blood. Her blood is the ink. The show must go on. Evelyn flipped through. The script described things before they happened. What she would say, what she would feel. Even now, she saw a line. She looks up. She hears her own voice calling. And then it happened. From behind the curtain, her voice, calling softly. "Evelyn, come on, you're late." She stood slowly, the chair screeching across the floor. The walls seemed to sway, rippling like cloth. Paint peeled down in strips, revealing older layers. Names carved beneath, roles written and scratched out. She found her own name etched into the wood beneath a layer of stage paint. Evelyn Harrow, Evelyn Hart, E. Harrow, E.H. Each scratched deeper, each iteration less real. She followed her voice down the corridor. Her footsteps made no sound now. The walls pressed closer. Lights buzzed and sputtered above her like dying insects. Ahead, the stage door stood open. But the theater beyond wasn't the same. It had changed again. This time, it was a graveyard. Rows of chairs twisted into crooked headstones. The aisles covered in fog. On the stage, instead of the set, there was only a single coffin. Evelyn stepped forward. Her voice called again, but not from ahead, from behind. She turned. A girl stood in the aisle. The girl, same face, but the mask was gone. The skin peeled at the edges. Her eyes were hollow, filled with flickering candlelight. "I didn't mean to take you," the girl whispered. "But someone has to stay." Evelyn didn't run this time. She walked toward her. "Who are you?" she asked. The girl reached out. "I was you, before you became her." Behind them, the coffin lid creaked open. The sound was sharp, wood grinding against itself. Evelyn turned toward the stage. A mirror lay inside the coffin. She approached slowly. It reflected the girl, then Evelyn, then both of them blended together. One face shifting in and out of focus, lips parting in opposite directions, eyes mismatched. The mirror began to whisper, not words, lines, scripts, fragments, broken performances and forgotten auditions. Apologies mouthed in silence. You took the bow. You read the final line. You finished the scene so she could begin again. Evelyn reached out to touch the mirror. It rippled under her fingertips. A hum filled her skull. Not painful, familiar, like applause, like breath, like memory uncoiling. And suddenly, she remembered. The first rehearsal, the dusty stage, the strange script with no ending. Garrison smiling too wide, the role no one else wanted. The mirror crackled beneath her hand. She saw them now, all the girls before her. Each one staring from inside the glass. All of them had played the role. All of them had disappeared. All of them had spoken the same last line. She stepped back. The coffin snapped shut. The girl behind her whispered, "It's not your role anymore." Evelyn turned. The theater was empty. The girl was gone. Only the script remained on the chair, flipped to the final page. A single line burned into it. "Let them forget your name. Let the story remember you." She took the script in her hands, and for the first time, the pages turned black. The lights above her dimmed until only one remained, a spotlight. She stepped beneath it and said nothing. No line, no bow. The curtain began to fall, but behind it, something breathed. The curtain fell, but Evelyn remained. Alone, beneath the fading spotlight, her shadow stretched unnaturally long across the warped floorboards. The stage was silent, thick with dust motes, dancing in the last flickers of amber light. The theater had gone still, the air dense with that familiar hum, the one that always came before the whispering began. But this time, no voice came, just the hush of breath too close, just out of reach. Evelyn stared into the darkened seats. Every row was empty, yet she could feel their gaze, cold and waiting. The audience was gone, but the watchers had never left. They never clapped, never blinked. They remembered. She turned her back to them and faced the curtain. It had fallen, yes, but something moved behind it. Not the girl, not Garrison, not any cast she had ever known. It was something else. Old, patient, made of velvet and shadow, born from unfinished lines and swallowed performances. She had felt it before, in the dressing room mirror, in the trapdoor beneath the stage, in every breath that wasn't hers. And now it wanted her to stay. The theater creaked around her, like an old ship adrift in black water. She took a step forward. The curtain twitched. Then the floor shifted beneath her. She stumbled as the stage boards bowed inward, curling like leaves under frost. Beneath them, a chasm yawned open, not of fire or stone, but of script. Endless parchment pages, torn and bleeding ink, swirling like a vortex. A voice rose from the pit. "The role is never finished!" Her own voice, but fractured. 1,000 echoes of herself layered over one another, each reciting a different line, a different emotion, a different ending. She covered her ears. It didn't help. The sound was inside her now. One page floated upward and brushed her arm. It burned cold. She looked down. It bore a line she had never spoken. She chose the silence and became the echo. Her feet slid forward, drawn to the pole. But then, the mask. It lay at the edge of the chasm, untouched, waiting. Her own face carved into its surface now, smooth and unblinking. She picked it up with trembling hands, and for the first time, she understood. The mask wasn't for hiding. It was for keeping the self inside, contained. She turned it over. Inside was writing, etched in dried blood. Put it on, or become the voice forever. Evelyn stared at it for a long time. Then she raised the mask to her face and stopped. She looked out at the rows of empty seats again and said quietly, "I want out." Nothing answered. The air waited. Then the curtain rose, not as fabric, but as breath. The shadows peeled back, the watchers leaned forward, the stage lights ignited in a burst of unnatural blue, casting her in full view. She stood alone. No lines left to read, no script in her hand, just silence and a choice. Her fingers gripped the mask tighter. She turned toward the wings. One final step. The trap door had vanished, the mirror shattered, the coffin sealed. But the door, the one no one had used in years, stood open. Sunlight poured through it, not warm, but real. Evelyn stepped forward. Every spotlight followed her. Every sound ceased. Even the theater breathed in, and she walked out. Not into applause, not into memory, but into silence. Behind her, the theater groaned, sighed, then collapsed inward with a sound like fabric tearing underwater. She did not look back. The mask fell from her hand and shattered. The ink inside her veins stilled. The whispers faded, and Evelyn Harrow, no longer a character, no longer a voice, disappeared into the light. The stage remained, but it was empty until the lights flickered and a new script began to write itself.